Hey, everybody, what's up? Welcome into another edition of the Chop Shop. Trey Wingo here with Mark Schlereth as we've come to the end of the first week of free agency stink in the NFL. The legal tampering period started on Monday, which, of course, if it's legal, it can't be tampering. If it's tampering, it can't be legal. But that's really a separate discussion. The thing that I've taken away from this so far is a couple of things. One, Bill Belichick is drunk with power. I don't know what the Raiders are doing, and the wide receiver market apparently isn't nearly as hot as everyone thought it was going to be.
Well, I think the great thing about the wide receiver market for me, let me start there because, I've got a lot of wide receivers that I play with that I love. They're my guys, whether it's Ricky Sanders or Gary Clark or Art Monk or Rod Smith or Eddie McCaffrey. I love those guys. But the general wide receiver market has been so overinflated simply because they have somehow, I don't know who marketed the wide receiver position. Maybe it was Keyshawn. That it was like it's become so overvalued. Like you can't win without one of us alpha dogs out there playing receiver. It is the most dependent position. The NFL is all dependent. You can't be good at quarterback if you're not protected. The run game and all that stuff, the play action stuff. But the most dependent position of all positions to me is 10 guys have to do their job exceptionally well for you to even sniff a football. And then if the best cover guy is over you and they've rolled that way, you don't get to see the football anyhow. So it's the most dependent position of all positions. And I think the market is reflecting that.
Yeah, not only that, but obviously what we've seen over the last couple of drafts, and we got another rich wide receiver draft coming up next month, is that there are guys that are coming out ready-made out of the college game, and you certainly saw that this past year with Justin Jefferson, among others. And, DK Metcalf and Brown, that was also down there at Ole Miss with him for the Tennessee Titans. These guys are coming out ready-made, so it's like, okay, I can get this guy on a rookie wage scale. CeeDee Lamb for the Cowboys last year. Even though Jerry Jeudy didn't have the greatest season for the Broncos, but I mean, like, they come out ready-made, and suddenly, okay, I can get you on a rookie wage scale as opposed to paying top dollar for a free agent.
Yeah, I think the other thing is not only can you get them in the first round, but you see a bunch of guys slipping in the second and third round that end up being studs. So yeah, I think that's part of the deal as well. And let's face it, nowadays you can't touch the guys, right? Everything is predicated on the offense having possession of the football and being able to move the football down the field and scoring. So all the rules are bent toward offensive efficiency. And I think guys are coming in, like you said, not only ready-made, but I think that the rules are bent for those guys to have more success than they've ever had. So I think there's a lot of that stuff. In the college passing game, obviously, as much as they throw the ball, guys just through osmosis and through repetition are getting better than they were earlier coming in, where that was a big-time adjustment kind of position.
Yeah, and by the way, Kenny Golladay, I think, is still out there at the taping of this. And how about Juju Smith-Schuster? The Steelers went Dr. Evil, come back for less money than the Ravens were offering and what the Chiefs were offering.
Well, I mean, the Chiefs are the one that surprised me. The Ravens, I get it. You go to the Ravens as a receiver and you're like, okay, so for every attempt or every target I get, I got to throw 7 blocks. Okay. Like, I don't like that ratio, but are you kidding me? In Kansas City with Mahomes and with, Kelsey controlling the middle of the field and Tyreek Hill. And I just like that one's the one that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And we'll get to the Steelers in a minute, because I think there are teams that are in trouble going into 2021. And I think Pittsburgh is one of them. But let's start with the first thing that I said, Bill Belichick's 180. Now, if you have followed this at all since last year, you could see that this was the year they were going to do this, right? Because they finished 7-9. Tom Brady left. They hadn't drafted really well. In fact, I think last year they took 2 tight ends and they moved back up in the 3rd round to get one of them, Dalton Keene, and neither one of these guys panned out. They had money, they had cap space, and they needed to upgrade. So, like, I get it. It's a shock to the system what the Patriots have done, because there was that infamous picture 2 years ago of Bill, in a bathing suit, shirtless in the Barbados, laughing his ass off while everyone was throwing out buku dinero to all these free agents. But it's a different time and it's a different need for this team. They need to go out and get people and recruit people. So it's weird to see the Patriots, spending on everybody. But if you followed what's happened with them and you understood how they went into 2020 and how they're thinking about 2021, you could see that this was going to be a year that they would take a different path.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of different factors here for me. And I don't know, like, all these contracts are funny money contracts anyhow. It's like the one,
Correct.
they're all goofy.
The Taysom Hill
Taysom
contract.
Hill.
4-year, 100. No, it's a 1-year deal with 3 voidable years after that. So let's call it what it is.
Right. So I look at free agency in past years with elevated salary cap and all the things that have gone on. I look at that as the first day of free agency, you're spending premium dollars on average players. And this year is different with the salary cap situation. At the time that free agency hit, they had negotiated the new television rights deal, which I'm sure that was coincidental. But I just think it's weird because I think you're probably spending really good money on really good players. I think it's probably as equal. It's not overinflated as it normally is. And so I think when you look at Judon, you look at Jonnu Smith, you look at Hunter Henry. You're talking about really good football players. And like I said, the contracts don't mean anything to me because there's so many voidable situations and there's so many ways to fund that contract and move that contract around that I look at this as an opportunity for them to say, hey, listen, we're going to get back in this thing and we're going to be back challenging the Buffalo Bills because we're going to build a roster that can compete with them. And a lot of it obviously has to do with how your quarterback ends up playing, but from the standpoint of the players they got premium, really good players.
Yeah, and they picked up a couple wide receivers in Aguilar and Kendrick Bourne. Look, people are always going to scrutinize Cam Newton for this past season, but let's be honest. He was a late signing in a year where they didn't have a single offseason program to work out together. Then he got COVID in September, and then some of his best weapons, which weren't really great weapons to begin with, they got hurt. So I don't think it's fair to judge Cam on what we saw last year in New England. Right. I think they're going to be a much better team, and he's going to be a much better quarterback in 2021.
Yeah, I want to bring up, you brought up Aguilar and an interesting thing, just a sidebar, because I did a couple of Raider games. And so Aguilar,
I can tell by the vitriol against you from the Raider fans for all those years you kicked their ass as a Bronco.
Right. It's going to be good. But, in Philadelphia, he was known for dropping the ball. It was even that guy that, saved the baby out of the burning building.
Unlike Aguilar.
Unlike Aguilar. But it was interesting talking to John Gruden and talking to Derek Carr. Like, they saw his ability to run, his speed, and the fact that he never got tired. And they're like, why is this guy playing slot? Yeah. He's like, why is he a slot receiver? And so when they saw that in training camp, they said, can you move out to X or Z or whatever, and not be the F, not be the motion guy, not be the slot guy. And from that day forward, he was just money. And so here's a guy that had played out of position, so to speak, that always played a position where he wasn't his natural thing. And when they moved him to the outside, all of a sudden he excelled. By the way, I had this conversation with Art Monk. Art Monk, we were just talking, and Art Monk, Hall of Fame wide receiver, said his biggest fear in playing in the NFL was press coverage. Yeah. Because he was so big, but he wasn't good at getting off press. And he said, Joe Gibbs, after his first year, saw him, and he said, you're not a Z. I'm going to move you into slot. I'm going to motion you. You're going to be in the back of stacks. You're going to be in the back of bunch formations. You're going to get free releases for me. And all of a sudden, Art Monk became a Hall of Famer because of moving him into a position that better suited his skill set. And that's Aguilar. So I think Aguilar could be a really big find for New England. If all you remember him is from Philly, there was a transformation last year where he was actually really good.
No, he played great for the Raiders, no question. So we think the Patriots have improved, and let's now talk about the team that Aguilar left, the Raiders. I have no idea, none, what the Raiders are doing. Derek Carr just saw his entire starting offensive line, except for one guy they re-signed, go away. You lose Rodney Hudson. You can make the case Rodney Hudson's the best center in football. And they bring back another running back to go with Josh Jacobs. What are we doing?
What
are we doing? Like, what are we doing? I don't know. Like, John, Mike, love you guys. You're great in the booth. What the hell are you doing?
Right. It's really interesting because my buddy, my former college teammate, is the O-line coach, Tom Cable.
Yeah.
And Tommy has worked wonders. And you remember all the years in Seattle when Seattle would get guys that were tight ends and convert them to tackle, defensive tackles. They convert them to offensive guard, and they'd say, "Hey, Tommy, go work with this. Here's a left tackle. Move him into center. Good luck.
Yeah.
We hope it works
Yeah.
out for you." So that's been Tommy's history. I will say this: they had so many issues with COVID. They had so many issues with protocol. They had so many issues with injuries last year that a lot of different guys played. This Denzel Good, he's a really outstanding player. He played
the
a
one
lot
they
of
brought
snaps for them.
back. He's the one they
Right.
brought back. Yeah.
I think they're bringing Richie Incognito back on a 1-year deal. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I am with you. When they were together last year, they're a dominant group. An absolutely dominant group. And the crazy thing is Mike Mayock, the general manager, Mike Mayock's father was an offensive line coach.
Yep.
Mike Mayock understands the trench warfare and how important that trench warfare is. Either they have a couple of young guys that they really believe are going to be very good, or this is just one of them roll the dice. Let's see what happens. I don't have any clue. I am flabbergasted because that was to me the strength of their football team.
Yeah. And, I just think they're a mess. Look, maybe they know what they're doing. And it's great, but so far the great John Gruden experiment, how's that worked out? They haven't made the postseason, haven't come close to making the postseason. So we'll see what happens there. Let's stay in that division. Obviously, it was a shock when the Chiefs, who obviously needed massive line help in the Super Bowl, decided to release both of their starting tackles from week 1 a year ago, Eric Fisher and Mitchell Schwartz. However, now they get Joe Thuney, which people that don't know and people that don't follow interior offensive line Patriot football know how good Joe Thuney is. He is a stud in every way, shape, and form. They get Kyle Long to come out of retirement. He'll probably move inside, which is frightening because he's 6'8". Okay. He's going to be 6'8", moving on the inside. They get Laurent, let me say it, Duvernay-Tardif back.
Yes.
From a year off dealing with COVID in Canada because he's, an actual doctor in the NFL. So right away, you have Thuney, Long, and Tardif back on the inside for Kansas City. They got to find some tackles, but I kind of like where they're going. And, a guy like Alejandro Villanueva is still available out there. Is he going to be Mitchell Schwartz or Fisher this past year? Probably not. But Villanueva is still very serviceable. So I'm curious how they rebuild that offensive line.
I am too, and I'm curious about Kyle Long because if you followed his career in Chicago, he was a better guard than tackle, but he moved out to tackle and played really well there, So Kyle is a very versatile player, an unbelievable athlete, and you're right. The dude is – have you seen him hit a golf ball, by the way?
Oh, my God. He doesn't hit a golf ball. He destroys a golf ball. It's like that scene from The Natural where he hit the baseball and it became unwound. The golf ball goes into a million different pieces. All the dimples go in different directions.
And he's smooth as silk, and he's just piping it 400 yards down the center. So he is a crazy good athlete, a really good football player. I could see them say, hey, you're going to play right tackle for us, and then go out and, like you said, either get a Villanueva or in the draft, there's a couple of good tackles. There's a guy that's really been making his way up in Northwestern, and this Slater kid who has just killed the workouts, but he's really good on film too. So I think ultimately they have a plan, and part of that plan, like you talked about earlier, is, salary certainty. If you go out and draft a tackle like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers did with Wirfs, and he pans out and plays well, he was great, then you've solved an issue for the next 4 years. And so, like, I have a lot of faith in their ability to draft well, their ability to put a team together. And then, even though Tampa Bay and the Super Bowl notwithstanding, they still have the components to cover a multitude of sins, even up front. That was a perfect storm of unbelievable coverage, great pass rush coupled with that coverage. And the fact that Kansas City was given the opportunity to run the ball down their throats, and they said, no, thanks. We'll average 7 yards a carry, and we're only going to run it, 6-7 times. So that's football hubris.
Yeah, it was a little Mike Martzi against the Patriots in Super Bowl 36, actually. It really was. Like, they dared run Marshall Faulk. Like, I'm going to throw it. It was a little weird. Although that whole thing, look, I'm not giving anybody a pass, but obviously with what happened to Andy Reid's kid, the whole thing just it was a weird
that's
situation.
tough, man.
That will throw you off your game. There's no question
for
about
sure.
it. All right, you mentioned the Bucks. I think you got to give Jason Light a ton of credit. They kept everybody. They kept Levante David. They kept Shaq Barrett. They kept Chris Godwin. They found a way to keep everybody. Everybody. And people are saying, well, you're going to get rid of this guy or you're going to take this guy. They kept everybody, and they get Gronk back as well. Jason Light and company did a fantastic job keeping the band back together.
And there's no question about it. And it's funny when you have a GOAT. You saw it here in Denver when Peyton Manning was playing, how guys would take less money just to be a part of it. Guys wanted to play here, and guys wanted to re-sign. You get Tom Brady, and guess what? All of a sudden, everybody goes, how much is enough? All right, so I take $1 million less a year, when I'm making 19. I'll take 17 as opposed to 18 or whatever that going rate is.
Right.
And I'll have a chance for the next 2 years to put more Super Bowls on my, more Super Bowl rings on my fingers. Like, why not? Why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? And I just think that that's one of the unbelievable parts, probably the vastly underrated part of Tom Brady is his connectivity to his teammates. Like, he is a guy, my sense in meeting with him multiple times this year, my sense of Tom Brady is he's uber famous and he just wants to be one of the guys. Yeah. Like, it's almost like relief when he gets to come into the facility and just be a football player, as opposed to Tom Brady, who's married to Giselle, who's, he loves that aspect of this game. And I think this is one of the reasons he's playing and he'll play beyond 45 is because this is what keeps him normal. It's normalcy. It's like, it lets me be me. This is who I am. And so I think the guy is amazing, and guys absolutely love playing with him.
Yeah. Another team we got to talk about is Pittsburgh. Look, they get Ben back, and kudos to him because he's playing at $15 million, which is really cheap for a starting quarterback of his level. We understand that. And Juju's coming back. That's great. But boy, they lost a ton of parts. They lost a ton of people, and they're just pushing the salary cap disaster down the road a year or two with the way they've redone these contracts. But they lost so many pieces on that defensive side of the football. Mm-hmm. I have real concerns about the quality we're going to see out of Pittsburgh in 2021.
You know what? You ever watch those, the Animal Planet Network and all that kind of stuff? They remind me of a dung beetle, just pushing that big piece of, it's twice as big as the beetle. And they're pushing that big route. This is a big ball of dung. That's the salary cap. That's their cap situation. They're just pushing that dung around until they have to eat it, I suppose.
By the way, now that you've made that analogy, we have to let everybody know the group text that we put this together with to make it go every week is called poop. So
yes, yeah,
it makes all the sense in the world.
Perfect sense. It always comes back to poop for me. Anyhow,
it's never not funny.
Right? No, it's always fun. I think the interesting thing. So I was supposed to do a Pittsburgh game last year, so I prepped it, and then I got switched because of all the stuff that went down with Baltimore moving for. So anyhow, long story short, I got switched. But I did a pretty intensive breakdown of Pittsburgh. And Trey, it's funny when you call games every week, you're really focused on the team that they're covering. And a lot of the other things, you're just seeing a bunch of highlights, and you're not really as dug into the whole league. You're dug into the team that you're covering that week. So as I went through the tape, I was like, I have never seen a team that is more adverse to running the football. Yeah. I've never seen a team that is
didn't even try.
Like, this is the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're in 5 wides. And I'm not just talking about, hey, let's spread out a tight end. Let's get trips open and go H left outside, and a nasty trips. Like let's go trips right, open, nasty, H left outside and get 5 guys. I'm talking about 5 wide receivers. I'm not like, hey, screw you. Hey, tight end, come here. Running back, come here. No, we don't need you. We're going to go 5. We're going to Cinco 5 wides. And it was just like, as I'm watching them, I'm thinking to myself, how are these guys 11-0 again? Yeah. Like, how are they 11-0? And obviously, they fell apart. They have got to get back to what I think is Pittsburgh Steelers football. Run the ball, play outstanding defense, play hard-nosed, control line of scrimmage, on both sides of the ball type of football. And they have gotten so far away from that. And I think for Ben to really finish his career, cap his career the way he started it as a world champion, is you're going to have to get back to that style of football. I don't know if they're capable of doing it. They've gone so far away from it it's so far from what their identity is. I don't know how you get back to it, Trey.
Yeah, a little less zero personnel. How about some more 23 and 22 personnel?
Yeah,
Let's do a little bit
that
more.
would be good.
Let's do a little bit more of that in Pittsburgh. Okay, there's a million things we could cover, but I want to save some for later episodes. But I do need to talk about this. There are reports, pretty strong reports, and granted, this was before a lot of support, all the latest wave of potential civil lawsuits against Deshaun Watson. And my philosophy on that is I have no idea. They should absolutely be looked into. And if he's guilty, let the legal process take out. And if he's not guilty, the legal process should go the other way. So I'm stepping away from that because rampant speculation or uninformed speculation about something like that is the dumbest thing anybody can do. So I'm just moving on from that. But there are reports that the Dolphins are actually thinking about making a play for Deshaun Watson. And the kind of shit drives me crazy. And I'll tell you why it drives me crazy. Same thing with the Jets. You had an organization in place that last year or the last 2 years was going to literally tank for Tua. That was the plan. Let us tank for Tua so we can get this guy. And Brian Flores, the head coach, and Chris Greer, the GM, said, F that. We're not tanking for anybody. We're going to try and win games. And they got him anyway. So you get Tua, and he comes to you off a year where he's had a massive, horrendous injury late in his final season in college football that's going to delay any sort of attempt to get going. He doesn't have a true offseason to start with a team. He has a limited number of reps as a starting quarterback. And granted, Fitzpatrick was the better quarterback last year. Not a doubt in my mind. But you don't know what Tua is or isn't at this point based on the sample size. And organizations that just keep chasing their tails, where they keep saying, well, we'll just change the quarterback and everything will get better. No, that's how everything stays the same. That's why I love what Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott have done up in Buffalo. They believed in Josh Allen, even when he had a couple of rocky years to start. So let's fix it. Let's give him Cole Beasley underneath for easy completions. Let's make sure we find a serviceable tight end in Dawson Knox. Let's bring in speedsters like Brown and then Stephon Diggs. And I get it, Brown is now gone. And look what happened. Josh Allen became a Pro Bowl and MVP type player.
Yeah.
It just drives me crazy, Stink, that there's a thought process somewhere that they're thinking it's time to move on from Tua. How the hell do you know what Tua is at this point?
Right. And I think this is what comes down to when management doesn't listen, like you're not tied together. You're not all on the same page. Like ownership steps in and says, hey, this is what we're going to do. And you're like, dude, with all due respect, you're the owner. I don't need a scouting report from you. You've made billions of dollars doing whatever it was you did. Let me be the football coach. So I did a Miami-San Francisco game early in the season where Fitzpatrick was just marvelous. He just lit them up.
Been great.
And in my Zoom conference call with Brian Flores, I was talking to Brian about Tua, and he goes, hey, listen, man, he's not ready. If he's my son, he may not play this year. He's just not there yet, right? He goes, so if he was my son, I wouldn't want him to play, at least not now. It's too early. 2 weeks later, he started. So
guess who made that call?
Yeah,
guess who made that call?
That is not a Brian Flores call, right? That's a hey, my owner, I got a shiny new toy. Let me see what it looks like call. Yeah. And so that stuff does bother me. I will tell you this. This is interesting to me. Like you mentioned Allen, and I'm talking to Allen about mechanics and how he changed his mechanics and what he went through last offseason to become a more efficient passer and a more accurate passer. And I thought it was fascinating stuff just to talk about the kinetic chain and how he kind of changed his arm slot and a bunch of different things about just his mechanics in general. And I look at the transformation that he made, and then I see Mitch Trubisky, who I think probably could have got more than $2.5 million, and he could have had a chance to go compete somewhere, signs for $2.5 million to go back up Josh Allen. And my thought process is, hey, if they can fix Josh, maybe they can fix my pocket, my lack of pocket presence, my lack of pocket ability. Maybe they can fix some of that in me. And oh, by the way, Brian Daboll is one of the hottest commodities in coaching. He hasn't been able to get a head coaching job simply because of the fact that they go so deep in the playoffs. If Brian Daboll gets one next year, maybe I can go and be his guy. So I just thought it was one of those things that I look at Mitch Trubisky and say, well, that's kind of a mature way to go about, helping your career out in general. And which I just really appreciated about him as a player, kind of recognizing what you aren't, what you need to be, where's the best place to become what I need to be. And I give him a lot of credit for making a tough decision.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with Miami. And again, obviously, a lot of that will be predicated on what happens with the Deshaun Watson situation. And we'll let the legal process and the civil process play out there. But I'll leave you with this edition of the Chop Shop on this note. You mentioned it. Like, it's a really weird year because the salary cap took a dip for the first time since we've had a cap. And teams are claiming, oh, I don't have the money and all that kind of stuff. First of all, the cap is the biggest red herring of all time. I mean,
Right.
you can massage it. You just don't want to pay somebody. I get it.
Mhm.
Okay. And here's the other thing, which the NFL does better than anybody. They sell that narrative because you and I both know what's about to happen. The NFL is this close to getting all their TV deals rights locked in for another 10 or 11 years. And with the money that they're going to pull in before they sell a ticket, a jersey, a parking pass, a hot dog, a cheeseburger, a soda, every team is going to get over $300 million from the TV rights alone. So that's just the TV rights. Forget like your national beer sponsors or your national Microsoft sponsors or all that kind of. That's just the TV money. That's
Right.
300 million. The cap next year is going to be 180. It'll probably jump up 10 million or 15 million to a little over 200 in 2022. That leaves you, before you sell anything else, $90 million to work with. And then you have your national partners, your beer, your soda, your computer, all that kind of stuff. Streaming rights are going to be sold for the first time. And then every team also has their local revenue deals. And I get it. They go up and down the scale depending on where the market is. But because they rev share, and people that are very, very strict capitalists run the NFL business like socialists, that's how Green Bay can compete with New York in the same league when Green Bay has 4 people and New York has 4 billion people. Okay. So understand what they're selling you right now. Yes, this year was bad. They didn't make as much money as they wanted to. Nobody lost money. And they're just about to make sure everybody in that ownership group makes a bleep ton of money for the next 11 years. So just know that with your eyes wide open as you go into this.
Yeah, that is know that you're going to make $300 million a year per franchise before just on the
by
TV
doing
deals
nothing.
alone.
By doing nothing.
Yeah. And by the way, you've already cleared 90 million in profit. So you're like, what are you going to do now? Now I understand you have to pay your employees and all that kind of stuff, but boy, I tell you what you want to talk about, that's why they're billionaires and the players are millionaires right there. That sums it up.
And it's good. And it's good for the players in the sense that, the more rev that comes in, a bigger piece of the pie the players get. I understand that. But this is where the fight will never be fair, right? It's just, you're never going to get there. Like you see the players in other leagues, like the NBA specifically, and how much money those players are getting for a variety of reasons. But my God, the NFL is better at this than anybody.
Right.
Anybody. E pluribus unum, world without end. Amen.
Yes.
All right. Go, fly, be free. We'll talk next week. See ya.
All right, buddy. See you.